Thank you, Mr. President. I stand before you as the author of Senate Concurrent Resolution 62 as in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. As chair of the Legislative Black Caucus, I stand in front of this great body in solidarity with my fellow senator and fellow CLBC member and vice chair, Senator Kamlager, to recognize Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., who dedicated his life to nonviolent struggle for racial equality in the United States and abroad. The late Dr. Martin Luther King was born on January 15, 1929, in Atlanta, Georgia. This year would have been Dr. King's 93rd birthday, and we were honored to have his colleague, Reverend Lawson, who is celebrating 93 years of struggle and continuing to fight with us this past Wednesday at the Martin Luther King celebration. It's been nearly 54 years since Dr. King was assassinated on April 4th, 1968 in Memphis, Tennessee. Dr. King's tireless work during the Civil Rights Movement was instrumental in the passage of the landmark Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Dr. Martin Luther King was a courageous man who did not simply talk the talk, but was willing to die by his morals and his conviction. Without Dr. King's determination and resilience, I would not be able to serve here in this position, and as I stand here today in front of each and every one of you, neither would probably many of my colleagues in the Legislative Black Caucus. Dr. King's courage and resilience has inspired and motivated generations of individuals worldwide, and many like me who grew up during the Civil Rights Movement. Wednesday, we had the pleasure again of hosting the Black Caucus's MLK breakfast, and I hope we were all left inspired by those who came to join us in honoring the work of this great man. And as stated, we were joined by Reverend Lawson, who was Dr. King's right-hand man during most of the struggles for civil rights in this country. And if you missed it, I ask you to check out Facebook over the holiday weekend, and I promise you, you will be encouraged by what was there. As we reflect on how he permanently changed our country with his ideals, we must remember that this vision is not yet complete. To truly pay tribute to the life and work of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., and all that he has done to materialize his vision of having a more just and equal society, we must have the will and the appetite to do the right thing. Dr. King once said, "The time is always right to do what is right." Colleagues, the time to do what's right is now. Our democracy, our state, our nation depends on it. It is not enough for you alone to get into some good trouble. We all need to get into some good trouble. We have to galvanize and empower our families, friends, and communities to join us in this effort. We must honor Dr. Martin Luther King's legacy with action, with votes, and speaking truth to power. It is our mandate through his legacy to create positive change which takes us closer, step by step, to realizing civil rights, social justice in California and our nation. It's not enough to invoke his words and his name and do absolutely nothing. The night before Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated, he and his fellow comrades, Reverend James Lawson, were in town to help organize a strike for 1,300 Black sanitation workers, 11 days after two Memphis garbage collectors, Echo Cole and Robert Walker, were crushed to death in a manufacturing truck. Dr. King's last speech, "I've been to the mountaintop," he said. "We got to give ourselves to this struggle until the end. Nothing would be more tragic than to stop at this point in Memphis. We got to see this through." I ask, ladies and gentlemen, are you prepared to see this fight through? The fight not only to restore our democracy we have come to know, but to envision a democracy where all men and women, regardless of color, race, creed, are treated equal and afforded the full promise of this country. I believe Dr. Martin Luther King would want us to make a determined effort to endure any and all challenges if it meant realizing the dream for future generations as lawmakers, citizens, and this nation. I assure you, the Legislative Black Caucus is determined to see this fight for equality and justice through. I hope you will join us in this effort. By coming together to honor Dr. Martin Luther King and by fighting, we'll keep his dream alive. I respectfully ask for an aye vote on SCR 62. And I want to sincerely thank all of my colleagues who stood up this morning to add their thoughts, their words, their hopes, their beliefs in support and recognizing the life of Dr. Martin Luther King. And I hope we walk away with just not remembering the words, but really rededicating ourselves to what this man's life stood for and what he died for. Dr. King often stated, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about what matters most. I'm here to tell you, members, it's a lot of folks' lives are ending. It's a lot of folks who are silent on January 6th. It's a lot of folks who are silent on the homelessness in this country. It's a lot of folks who are silent on the racial disparities that still exist in this country. He often also said, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. We have far too many of our friends who are silent when we should be speaking up and letting the truth be heard. And he stated, it doesn't matter how long you live, it's how well you lived. He lived all of 39 years. It's only one member on this floor younger than that. And look at the impact that he made in 39 years. What are you doing, members? He also stated, we're not made by history. We're not makers of the history, I should say. We're made by history. Far too often we think it's about us. It's not about us. It's about service. Dr. King said we can all be great because we can all serve. I hope we reflect on much of what he stood for, much of what he stated this weekend. And as he would say, it shouldn't be a day off, but a day on for activism in our communities, a day on for helping end homelessness in this state, in this country, a day on for ending the racial divide that still separates us, a criminal justice system that still incarcerates far more African Americans and Latinos than anyone else in this country. It should be a day of service. It's about a day of empowering and making systemic change in this state and this nation. I respectfully ask for an aye vote on SCR 62.